Hello and welcome. Tonight, Supreme Court nullifies CBN's naira redesign policy, orders circulation of old 200, 500 and 1,000 naira notes till December the 31st this year, describes the president's disobedience of its order as dictatorship. Appeal Court grants requests by the PDP and the Labour Party presidential candidates Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi to inspect materials used by INEC in Saturday's presidential election. At least 12 people killed following the explosion of a pipeline conveying crude oil at a Rumwekwe community in Rivers State, following activities of illegal oil refiners in the area.
On business news tonight, National Bureau of Statistics report shows domestic airfares jumped by 95% in 12 months.
And on sports news tonight, Novak Djokovic's 20-match winning streak ends with a loss to Daniil Medvedev in Dubai.
From the nation's capital, ahead of the March 11th governorship election, the Assistant Inspector General of Police in charge of Kaduna and Katsina states assesses security situation in the zone, says adequate security is in place for the polls.
And in international news from London, the United Nations Human Rights Office says it is very disturbed after a court in Belarus sentenced a Nobel Peace Prize winner to 10 years in prison.
The nation's highest court has finally laid to rest the controversy surrounding the naira redesign policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria as it nullified the initiative. In a unanimous judgment, the 7-man panel of the Supreme Court also ordered that the old naira notes in the 200, 500 and 1,000 naira denominations should remain legal tender until December the 31st, 2023. Justice Emmanuel Agim, who read the lead judgment, also faulted the policy of the Apex Bank, saying the timing and implementation were defective. The court held that the president's disobedience of its February the 8th order is a sign of dictatorship and autocracy.
It is judgment day in the suit challenging the naira redesign policy of the federal government. And as expected, the main courtroom of the Supreme Court is filled with lawyers and the governors of Kaduna, Kogi, and Zamfara states. The three governors had instituted the suit challenging the policy. As at the last sitting on February the 22nd, a total of 16 states who applied to be joined were consolidated. They prayed the Apex Court to set aside the policy on the ground that it was inflicting hardship on Nigerians. Delivering judgment, Justice Emmanuel Agim held that the unconstitutional use of powers by President Muhammadu Buhari on the policy has breached the fundamental rights of Nigerians. He further states that the president failed to consult with the National Council of States, the Federal Executive Council, and the National Economic Council before directing the Central Bank of Nigeria to introduce the new naira notes. Citing Section 23, subsection 2 of the Constitution, the court holds that a dispute between the Federation and states must involve law or facts. The court further held that implementation of the directive by the Central Bank of Nigeria has deprived the plaintiffs access to their funds, and the president's broadcast of the 15th of February acknowledges this, and this has affected the governance of these states. The Apex Court further holds that the president in his broadcast admitted that the policy is flawed with a lot of challenges. The Apex Court held that President Muhammadu Buhari breached the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in the way he issued directives for the redesigning of the naira by the Central Bank of Nigeria.
We came to the Supreme Court to make Nigeria better. And by this judgment, no future president or central bank governor can come and announce a policy that ambushes the lives and the livelihoods of the Nigerian people anymore. We're very proud of what we've done, no matter what people say about us. But now that the Supreme Court has spoken unequivocally, I am confident that all the orders will be complied with.
Today's judgment is on behalf of all the people of Nigeria. It's not just the states that have won. It's on behalf of all the people of Nigeria who have been made to go through misery, pain.
The counsel to the federal government is optimistic that the order will be obeyed.
The Supreme Court has spoken. We cannot sit in judgment over the Supreme Court. I expect the CBN to comply. I expect the President to comply. We are a nation under law. The Supreme Court has spoken, and we are bound.
The court adds that the president's disobedience of the February 8 order is a sign of dictatorship and autocracy.
Meanwhile, human rights lawyer and senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Femi Falana, has described the judgment of the Supreme Court on reversing the controversial naira redesign policy as a beautiful day for Nigeria's democracy. Mr. Falana made his position known to Channels Television in Lagos. The senior advocate of Nigeria adds that President Muhammadu Buhari is bound by law to obey the judgment.
I strongly believe that it's a beautiful day for democracy in our country, because the court made the point that any deviation from the provisions of the Constitution with respect to consultation of constitutional bodies by the president, any deviation would tantamount to dictatorship, which is alien to democracy. Of course, the Supreme Court berated the president for disobeying his order, because it's a dangerous policy to disobey the orders of the Supreme Court of a country. You may not like the orders, but once it has not been set aside, all authorities and persons are required by Section 287 of the Constitution to comply and enforce the judgments of the Supreme Court. So for me, I think the Supreme Court did the right thing, interpreted the law correctly, and that will go a long way to enhance the struggle for democracy in our country. I do hope that the federal government will study the judgment and ensure that the terms are complied with by all the relevant authorities and persons in the country. The presidency announced that it was going to comply with the decision of the Supreme Court on this matter. And I do not expect anything less. Otherwise, you'll be inviting anarchy and chaos in the country. Once you abandon the rule of law, once you flagrantly disobey the decisions of the courts, and particularly the Supreme Court.
More reactions have been trailing the decision of the Supreme Court on the central bank's naira redesign policy, this time from the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mr. Femi Gbajabiamila. He's asking the CBN to comply with the Supreme Court judgment quickly. In a statement, the Speaker says despite the noble intentions behind the currency swap policy, the design and implementation of the policy has been flawed and contradictory to law and public policy. In his words, the decision of the Supreme Court suspending the currency swap policy introduced by the Central Bank of Nigeria and extending the implementation deadline to December 31, 2023, validates the position of the House in its entirety. According to him, while the House of Representatives anticipated action by the Apex Bank, there is still a need to examine and understand how this policy intervention turned out the way it did. He adds that the House will exercise its authority to review what he describes as the actions and inactions, the failures of law and procedures that set the conditions for this profound failure of public policy. For Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers State, today's judgment by the Apex Court is a vindication of his position on the naira redesign policy. Governor Wike, who made his view known in Ibadan, the Oyo State capital, during the commissioning of a project at the Ibadan airport, maintained that the CBN has no other option but to obey the Supreme Court's order.
I thank God Supreme Court today has told them that the old money remains valid till December. So if you still have your old money, use it. The highest court of the land has said so. Too bad for the governor of Central Bank. He has no choice. There's no any other directive that will override the judgment of Supreme Court.
Indeed, today's judgment of the Supreme Court nullifying the naira redesign policy may come as a relief to many Nigerians who have indeed grappled with the challenge posed by the naira swap. In this next report, our correspondent Will Ibong provides a background on how it has played out until now.
Deputy governors.
On October the 26th, 2022, in a special press briefing, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, said 2.73 trillion naira out of 3.23 trillion naira in circulation was outside the vaults of commercial banks. As part of measures to take control of currency in circulation, Mr. Emefiele, in that conference, announced the redesign of the country's currency.
The management of the CBN has sought and obtained the approval of President Muhammadu Buhari to redesign, produce, release, and circulate new series of banknotes at 200 naira, 500 naira, and 1,000 naira levels.
And on November the 23rd, 2022, President Muhammadu Buhari officially unveiled the new naira notes. But the acute scarcity of the new naira notes made the January 31st deadline appear unrealistic.
Last week, I cannot get 20 naira to buy pure water.
To even get 500 naira to eat, if you go and meet POS people, there's no money in POS people's hand.
With the approval of President Buhari, the CBN extended the legal tender status of the old notes to February the 10th, and the finance minister appealed to Nigerians to be patient.
Mr. President is not happy that citizens are really suffering, but we're convinced that it is something that needs to be done at this time.
However, on February the 3rd, 3 state governments, Kaduna, Kogi and Zamfara, citing hardships caused by the continued scarcity of the naira notes, sought the intervention of the Supreme Court, demanding a reversal of the policy. 5 days later, the court issued an interim order suspending the implementation of the deadline set by the federal government, but the CBN was unmoved by the court's order.
I want to say, unfortunately again, this time we will not be looking at extension of deadlines. So I am not going to make any promise to anyone that, that there will be any further extension of this deadline.
The biting cash crunch worsened. Nigerians got angry and the banks took the hit. In a televised speech on February the 16th,
there's the old 200 naira banknote.
President Buhari restored the validity of the old 200 naira notes and insisted that the 500 and 1,000 naira notes had ceased to be a legal tender.
The old 200 naira banknote be released back into circulation, and that it should also be allowed to circulate as legal tender with the new 200 naira, 500 naira, and 1,000 naira banknotes for 60 days from February 10th, 2023 to April 10th, 2023.
The number of plaintiffs rose as more states joined in the suit, and many had thought the Supreme Court would act on the disregard of the February 8th order by the president during the case hearing on February the 22nd. Rather, the court adjourned its final judgment on the matter till March the 3rd. On March the 3rd, the Apex Court nullified the federal government's naira redesign policy.
The Supreme Court has spoken that both the old notes and the new notes will be in circulation till 31st of December 2023. That is the position. Anything to the contrary will amount to contempt of court.
It remains to be seen if the president and the central bank will comply with the Supreme Court's judgment. Will Ibong, Channels Television News.
In part 2, after the break, the legal battle on the 2023 presidential elections begins as the presidential candidates of the PDP and the Labour Party heads to the Court of Appeal on the outcome of the polls. Do join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television. A reminder of our main stories. Supreme Court nullifies CBN's naira redesign policy, orders circulation of old 200, 500 and 1,000 naira notes till December the 31st this year, describes the president's disobedience of its order as dictatorship. Appeal Court grants request by the PDP and the Labour Party presidential candidates Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi to inspect materials used by INEC in Saturday's presidential election. At least 12 people killed following the explosion of a pipeline conveying crude oil at Rumekwe community in Rivers State, following activities of illegal oil refiners in the area. And the UN Human Rights Office says it is very disturbed after a court in Belarus sentenced a Nobel Peace Prize winner to 10 years in prison. Two political matters with legal dimension, of course, where the Court of Appeal in Abuja has granted the request of the candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, and his People's Democratic Party counterpart, Mr. Atiku Abubakar, for access to all the sensitive materials deployed by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, for the conduct of the presidential election on February the 25th. A panel of the Appellate Court, led by Justice Joseph Ike, made the orders after it heard two separate ex parte applications or the two presidential candidates filed alongside their political parties. Cited as respondents in the matter were INEC, the president-elect Bola Tinubu, as well as his party, the All Progressives Congress, APC. While Obi, in his application, moved by Mr. Alex Ejesieme, sought 6 principal reliefs, Atiku's lawyer, Mr. Adedamola Faluku, sought 7 prayers from the tribunal. Specifically, the applicants urged the court to compel INEC to allow them to obtain documents in its custody that were used for the election. They maintained that the requested documents would aid their petition against the outcome of the presidential contest that was declared in favor of the candidate of the APC. INEC had declared Senator Bola Tinubu winner of the presidential poll ahead of 17 other candidates who contested the election. Both the PDP and the Labour Party rejected the outcome of the election and vowed to challenge it in court. Meanwhile, 7 states under the People's Democratic Party, Adamawa, Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, Delta, Edo, Taraba and Sokoto, have withdrawn their suit challenging the declaration of the APC presidential candidate Bola Ahmed Tinubu as president-elect. The notice of discontinuance of the suit was signed by their lawyer and senior advocate of Nigeria, Mike Ozekome. Says the states had asked the Supreme Court to invoke relevant provisions of the law to annul the poll based on alleged irregularities and malpractices. And they also wanted the Apex Court to declare that the pronouncement of the candidate of the APC, Bola Tinubu, as winner of the presidential election and president-elect based on that election be declared void. For the president of the Nigeria Bar Association, the NBA, INEC appears to have performed somewhat highly in the just concluded presidential and National Assembly elections. While the president of the Nigerian Bar Association and senior advocate of Nigeria, Yakubu Maikiao, in an interview with Channels Television, said INEC, however, has to make deliberate efforts to improve on the lapses noticed in the polls.
I would say that the elections went well. Those who came out were happy to express their franchise. There were challenges, definitely. There were challenges that we got. Some infractions of the rules. Some of them actually constituted electoral offenses. But on the whole, I would score INEC as having performed maybe about 78–80% and in the delivery of these elections, and that would be an A for every exam, notwithstanding all the things that happened, which we are not ignoring, and that is why we are admonishing INEC, we are advising INEC, and we are recommending to INEC that in those areas where we saw lapses in the elections held on the 25th of February 2023, deliberate efforts must be taken to make sure that those lapses did not occur again in the elections that are coming up on the 11th of March. because when those lapses happened, it impacted on the confidence of the public in the process.
Well, for more on the views of the NBA president, do join us on Law Weekly tomorrow, Saturday, March the 4th at 3:30 p.m. Meanwhile, the convener of the Big Tent, Professor Pat Utomi, is asking INEC to review the outcome of the presidential election in at least 12 states of the Federation. Addressing journalists in Lagos, Professor Utomi says the call for a review of the poll is necessary because it failed the integrity test and cannot stand the test of time.
We ask for an INEC review, immediate review of the voting of last week in 12 states at the very least, including Lagos, Rivers, Delta, Imo, Akwa Ibom, Plateau, Benue, Kaduna, Adamawa, Taraba, Bayelsa, Bauchi. We ask that INEC begin immediately a process of review, that it collate and bring all the materials from these states to Abuja, where people feel less threatened, and that every party name a number of well-regarded people to be on the panel of review. Open, transparent, with sunshine, before the whole world, all the media, global and local, present as the counts take place. Unless they do this, then they do not show that they truly are Democrats. This needs to begin immediately. It will enable INEC come to some useful resolutions. The pattern of our prayers include that this whole process start with this review, and where there is dispute about the outcome of that review, that all of us demand from the court system. I know many people don't trust the judiciary in Nigeria, but we have to demand of the court system judgment based on a review of these troubled states and giving the mandate to he who the numbers point to.
A time to head to the nation's capital of Abuja, and Linda Akibe is indeed standing by. Great to have you, Linda.
Hello, Eltunde. Good to see you. Ahead of the March 11th governorship election, the Assistant Inspector General of Police in charge of Zone 14, comprising of Kaduna and Katsina states, Ahmed Abdurrahman, has assured the people of the two states of adequate security. He made the pledge during a visit to the Kaduna State Police Command to assess the security situation in the state ahead of the poll on March the 11th. Speaking to journalists after the meeting with the senior police officers of the command, Mr. Abdurrahman explains that there will be massive deployment of policemen and other security operatives to all parts of Kaduna and Katsina states to ensure the safety of voters and election officials.
Police is fully prepared. If you will refer to so many, press release by the first PPRO under the instruction of the IG, is that any mischief maker should please, whether it is a group or an individual, should resign his decision, because nobody will tolerate this. And I even told them, that is Katsina and Kaduna State, that anybody who tries to throw spanner into this system will meet us ready. We have been proactive, and we will arrest such a person and ensure that the full burden of the law bear on such people aggressively.
The governorship candidates of the All Progressives Grand Alliance in Enugu State, Mr. Frank Wike, has alleged that there is a plan by the PDP in Enugu State to compromise INEC officials and ad hoc staff to bypass the use of beavers and disrupt the governorship and House of Assembly elections in the state. Mr. Wike, who was speaking during a press conference in Enugu, also dismissed rumors that he has stepped down for the PDP candidate in the state, stating that he is in the race to win the election.
Compelled to bring to the attention of the public the grand and devious plans of the People's Democratic Party in Enugu to compromise INEC officials and ad hoc staff to bypass the use of beavers and generally disrupt the governorship and House of Assembly elections in the state through the use of thugs to cause mayhem, with a view to dispersing voters at polling units in order to have opportunity to rig the elections, subvert the will of the people to achieve victory at all costs. Since suffering massive electoral losses across the state on February 25, 2023, the PDP have held a series of meetings at various locations to perfect their nefarious plans to ensure that they disrupt the electoral process, compromise INEC staff, and deploy maximum violence.
Meanwhile, the PDP has responded to the allegations, describing it as a preemptive excuse for his expected abysmal outing in the election. In a statement, the Director of Communications of Enugu State PDP Governorship Campaign Council says there's no truth to Mr. Wike's claim. Still ahead on the news at 10, the National Bureau of Statistics report shows domestic airfares jumped by 95% in 12 months. That's some business news. Join us again. Welcome back to the news at 10, coming to you live from Abuja. It's a Black Friday in Rivers State today as a pipeline conveying crude oil exploded, killing at least 12 people. The explosion, which was initially reported by the Youth and Environmental Advocacy Center through its crude oil spill alert system about 2 a.m. Friday, happened in Rumekpe town of Emoha local government area of the state. The police put the casualty figure 10 at 12, but residents told Channels Television that the number could be higher.
The road leading into Rumekpe is almost empty, save for a few farmers returning from their farms in this largely agrarian community. Obele Ndakohia is one of 9 communities that make up Rumekpe. The fire is still burning even as security operatives have cordoned off the area. Alongside burnt vehicles are the remains of one of the victims, burnt beyond recognition.
All of you are part of it.
The local government chairman, Chidi Lloyd, arrives at the scene and is visibly angry. He accuses security operatives of colluding with illegal crude oil refiners.
We have a measure good that they can cut down on one hand of belly. Because all of them, all these security agencies are all part of it. Yes, sir. They are all part of it. When they do this, and I have warned severally, God in heaven will bear me witness as to the effort I put in stopping this menace. When these boys crack this thing, how do they transport them? There's an army formation in front there. Yeah. There's an army formation. So that's why they don't know. It's unfortunate. My people have died as a result of poverty.
Mr. Lloyd also accuses the federal government of negligence. He does not spare the natives either, but blames them for engaging in illegal crude oil refining.
I blame the security operatives. I blame the Ministry of Petroleum. I blame the NMPC. I blame the IOCs. You can't fight this war without the collaboration of the natives. How can you protect this kind of place without the local government being involved?
In a statement by the Rivers State Police Command, the state police spokesperson put the number of those who died at 12, explaining that there were people suspected of scooping crude oil from the pipeline before it exploded.
That's all from Abuja. Back to you, Ayotunde.
Many thanks, Linda. Well, in Oyo State, Governor Seyi Makinde has reiterated that his administration will continue to embark on projects that would reposition Oyo as a preferred investment destination. Joined by his River State counterpart, Nyesom Wike, Governor Makinde commissioned the 500,000-litre capacity aviation fuel storage at Ibadan, the state capital, and to make air travel seamless in the state. He also commissioned a 3.2-kilometer road leading to the airport and a leisure park named in honor of former governor of the state, Omololu Olunloyo.
Hailing an aircraft from the Ibadan airport has never happened in the history of commercial flight operations. For the first time in 20 years, aircraft can now be fueled at the aviation terminal at the Ibadan airport, located at Alakia in Ibadan, the Oyo State capital. This feat is a dream come true for Governor Makinde, as it would impact significantly on the economy of the state.
Our projects and policies have ensured that Oyo State economy continues to grow. As of 2022, we have reduced Oyo State dependence on FAC to just about 50%. Well, this will be one of the last projects we will commission before the elections. And it is significant that we are taking another step towards opening our state to further economic growth.
His River State counterpart, Nyesom Wike, in his address before the commissioning, reiterated his stance on power rotation and true federalism. He also calls on Oyo residents to give Makinde another chance to consolidate on his achievement.
I have told people that those who fight for change, those who fight for revolution, may not be direct beneficiaries of that fight. But today, history has it that all of us now are aware that when power finishes from the south, it will go to the north. When it finishes from the north, it will come to the south. So it does not need to be written in any constitution at all before it is implemented. And I thank Nigerians for standing firm to see that this issue materialized. I know that the people of Oyo State know good things. One good turn deserves another. If in his first time, he can perform this way, what then will you think he will do second time? He will overperform like us.
The man in whose name the 3.2-kilometer airport road was designed, former governor of Oyo State and mathematician of note, Pa Omololu Olunloyo, expresses delight that he witnessed such an honor while still alive.
I never knew that we will have any reward in our own lifetime. So I thank Engineer Makinde, and I thank God and hope very positively that God will protect and anoint him once more as governor of Oyo State.
Partners of the Oyo State government on the aviation fuel storage depot project are excited at the opportunities presented by the project.
Aviation opens up markets and business, and the governor was quick to recognize that. Over the years, he has supported the airport with almost everything we need. He gave the fire tenders when the airport was shut down. He gave the fire tenders to reactivate the airport. He gave the terminals. When we started 20 years ago, we started outside the terminal beating. But he provided us terminals, he provided us machines, he provided us the protocol lounge. He was particular, and in the last 4 years, access to the airport has been tremendously improved. And that translates to economic development for Oyo State, which was one of his goals.
Alakia community, where these projects are sited, have at least 40 clusters of smaller communities with a population of over 10,000 residents.
It's now time for business news, and Anne Nwado is standing by. Anne?
Thank you, Ayotunde. Hello and welcome to Business News. Let's begin with aviation. The average domestic airfare paid by passengers has increased by 94.78% in the past 12 months, and that's according to latest data coming from the National Bureau of Statistics. The development comes amid reports of various challenges facing the local aviation industry. In its Transport Fare Watch report for the month of January this year, the NBS says that airfares recorded a 0.16% increase on a month-on-month basis. The local airfares rose from an average of 74,586 naira 49 kobo in December 2022 to 74,702 naira 70 kobo in January 2023. On a year-on-year, fare rose by 94.78% from 38,352 naira 19 kobo in January 2022. Economic think tank, the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, CPPE, has commended the ruling of the Supreme Court on the use of the old currency notes as a legal tender. According to the CPPE Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Muda Yusuf, the Supreme Court ruling protects the citizens from a policy which it says is disruptive, repressive, and insensitive. He further adds that the trouble was not with the redesign, but the deliberate and unrestrained mopping up of cash in the economy, which has paralyzed the retail sector and even crippled the informal economy. Dr. Yusuf believes that the bigger threat to monetary policy effectiveness and inflation is the 22 trillion naira ways and means finances of the central bank. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, says the fiscal stimulus injected into the economy was a major factor which contributed to the inflationary pressure currently being felt in Nigeria and some other nations. In a new report titled, "How We Missed the Recent Inflation Surge," the IMF institution says that one peculiar feature of the policy response to the pandemic in the year 2020 was the aggressive fiscal stimulus, which some observers say is similar to wartime spending. The IMF also mentions that the size of the COVID-19 fiscal stimulus packages announced by the different governments in the year 2020 correlates positively with the core inflation forecast errors. Meanwhile, the Washington-based institution says the inflation outlook should better integrate the impact of fiscal policy, especially in an environment where supply constraints amplify the impact of excess demand on inflation. The price of Bitcoin has dropped to its lowest level in about 2 weeks. Amid wider threat retreats in crypto markets, investors are digesting the unraveling of the key industry payments network. The world's biggest digital currency sank as much as 6% today, and that's before paring some of the slide to trade around $22,000 as of noon today in Singapore. And this is coming as the digital assets industry is already absorbing the fallout of troubles at crypto-friendly U.S. bank Silvergate Capital Corp, which has said that it is reviewing whether it can remain viable. The digital asset sector is also contending with a border regulatory clampdown in the U.S., as well as expectations that interest rates will stay higher for the longer period to fight inflation, thereby sapping risk appetite. Well, let's head to the equities market now in Nigeria. It reversed the Thursday trading day in the week. Let's hear the details from Will Ebong.
Welcome to the stock market report. Equities recorded a pullback on the last trading day following the negative sentiments we saw in the market yesterday. Now, let's go inside the numbers. The benchmark index fell by 0.25% today, and that shaved up about 77 billion naira off the market cap. Seplat and O&O, the major culprits here, both stocks dropped 9.43 and 8.62% each, and which without question dragged down the oil and gas index by more than 4%. The banking index, however, made a flip into positive territory, closed 0.17% up. And Zenith Bank and Access Holdings made that happen today, while Flour Mills and PZ Cussons propped up the consumer goods index. It rose 0.2% today. I think that's why we saw a lot of movement in terms of volume. However, value and deals went south. With the Supreme Court's judgment today on the circulation of old naira notes, companies may not have to experience the cash scarcity which had lowered business activity last month. And that's the stock market report.
I'm Will Ibong. Is back to you. Thanks for watching Business News Tonight. I'm Anne Mwawadu. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. It's back to you, Ayatunde.
Thank you so much, Anne. A court in Belarus has sentenced Nobel Peace Prize winner and human rights activist Ales Bialiatski to 10 years in prison over allegations of smuggling and financing actions grossly violating public order. Human rights groups and his supporters say the ruling is a miscarriage of justice. Here's Simon Pusey on this and other international stories in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The UN Human Rights Office says it is very disturbed after a court in Belarus sentenced a Nobel Peace Prize winner to 10 years in prison. Ales Bialiatski was convicted of smuggling and financing actions grossly violating public order. He was one of 3 winners of the 2022 Nobel Peace Prize. He was arrested in 2021 following massive street protests over widely disputed elections the previous year and accused of smuggling cash into Belarus to fund opposition activity. His supporters say the authoritarian regime of Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko is trying to silence him.
We are very disturbed at the trial of these Belarusian human rights defenders. We're gravely concerned about the lack of fair trial proceedings and access to an independent judiciary in Belarus, placing human rights defenders in Belarus at risk of criminal persecution for their legitimate human rights work. I understand that by the end of 2022, there were at least 1,446 people, including 10 children, being held, having faced or facing criminal proceedings.
Ukraine has told some residents to leave Kupiansk as Russia seeks to retake the city it left last year. Kharkiv's military command urged families and those with limited mobility to leave due to constant shelling by Russian forces. Russia took the northeastern city, an important supply hub, early in the full-scale invasion, with Ukraine recapturing it last September. It comes as the notorious Wagner Group says its troops have practically encircled the key city of Bakhmut. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has visited a military hospital in the Lviv region. Zelensky talked to wounded Ukrainian soldiers undergoing treatment in the hospital and thanked them for their service before giving out various awards. The prominent Cambodian opposition figure Kem Sokha has been sentenced to 27 years of house arrest and also barred from running for political office. Here, waving to supporters as he arrived at court, he was also barred from voting in elections.
The multi-year process to silence Kem Sokha, based on a fabricated conspiracy.
W. Patrick Murphy, the U.S. ambassador to Cambodia, said the case was a miscarriage of justice. Kem Sokha was arrested in 2017 over accusations he was conspiring with the United States to overthrow Hun Sen, who has ruled Cambodia for nearly 4 decades. Greece is experiencing yet another day of protests after the devastating train crash which killed at least 57 people on Tuesday. Eyewitness video shows police with shields in Athens as people demonstrated. Amid shock and sorrow in a country where 3 days of national mourning have been declared, families and friends say they want answers over how such a crash could have happened. Palestinians have marched in a funeral procession for a 15-year-old boy they said was shot and killed by Israeli forces. The Palestinian Health Ministry says the teenager was shot dead by Israeli forces on Thursday. The Israeli military said in a statement that soldiers shot at suspects who had hurled explosives. Police officers and employees from an oil field company in Colombia have been taken hostage by rural communities. A police officer and civilian were killed during violent protests in Colombia's Caqueta province, and 79 officers and 9 oil field workers were taken hostage by rural communities. The violence began in a rural part of the San Vicente del Caguan municipality, where an oil field belonging to Emerald Energy was attacked and a fire started by protesters. And people are wading through waist-deep snow and tunnels made by snowdrifts in Northern California.
Oh my God. Woo!
video shows heavy snow which blanketed the area this week. California's Governor Gavin Newsom has declared a state of emergency in 13 counties, including Nevada County, where the video was shot. The U.S. National Weather Service has issued winter storm warnings for areas across the north of the state, advising people to avoid traveling unless necessary. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon, and welcome to Sports News. Now, Coach Salisu Yusuf has called to camp 30 players ahead of this month's Africa Under-23 Cup of Nations final qualifying fixture against Guinea. The list includes 4 goalkeepers, 8 defenders, 10 midfielders, and 8 forwards. Nigeria will host the first leg of the fixture against Guinea at the Lekon Salami Stadium in Ibadan on Wednesday, the 22nd of March. All the players have been directed to report at the Cheetah Hotel, Abuja, ahead of the contingent's departure to the Oyo State capital. In England, Manchester United manager Erik ten Hag says the Red Devils will go into this weekend's Premier League clash at rivals Liverpool with confidence and are ready to battle for 3 points as they look to a win for a first win at Anfield since 2016. Ten Hag believes the atmosphere will be great but expects a hostile reception from Liverpool fans. Liverpool and Manchester City have dominated the Premier League for the past few seasons, but pace setters Arsenal and third-placed United are threatening to break that duopoly.
I'm looking forward. I know the ambience, the atmosphere will be great, will be hostile against us, and we like it. It's, of course, a test, but we're facing Liverpool, and we're really looking forward. And I know these players, my squad, my team, will be prepared to go and fight and to go with confidence. But we know that's going to be difficult. We know we have to suffer, we have to sacrifice to get a good result.
On the flip side, Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp expects a tough game against Manchester United in Sunday's Premier League game at Anfield, but insists his team is capable of winning the game. He says Liverpool 6th in the league on 39 points after 24 games. He believes that 10 points behind will not be a problem. The Merseyside club have struggled for consistency this season with a recent 2-0 league win over Newcastle United and Wolverhampton Wanderers coming either side of a 5-2 home defeat to Real Madrid and a goalless draw at Crystal Palace.
I'm really fine. How is that? It's much better to sit here and facing your questions when you won the last game. Absolutely, so much better. So that's my first motivation. That's why I want to win it. That we have a press conference after and I don't have to look in your faces and answer all the average rubbish questions. So I will tell the boys that they can make my life a little bit easier. But on top of that, obviously, we have 5 million reasons why we want to win this game. And they are where they are. They turned into a result machine. They squeeze results out. They have really good performances, top football. And if it's not going that well, they still get results. So that's why you are there. They are fully, everybody knows it, they are fully in the fight for winning the league.
Well, the weekend is just a few hours away. Let's wait and see who will come out tops in that fixture. But that's a wrap on Sports News. I'm Victor Matthias. Thank you for watching. It's back to Ayatunde with the wrap of the news at 10.
Many thanks, Victor. And the main news again. The Supreme Court today nullified CBN's naira redesign policy and ordered the circulation of old 200, 500 and 1,000 naira notes till December the 31st this year, just as it described the president's disobedience of its order as dictatorship. We also told you that the appeal court granted the request by the PDP and Labour Party presidential candidates Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi to inspect materials used by INEC in Saturday's presidential election. And that's the news at 10. Many thanks for watching. I'm Ayatunde Balogun. Do have yourselves a lovely weekend. Bye for now.